I born in North Vietnam, in Thu Châu, from the north, about 15 miles from Hanoi. And I born in 1950. And in 1954, when when France lost the fight in Điện Biên Phủ, and the country divided to two, our family my father decided to go to the south because that's we are Catholic, grew up as a Catholic. We want the freedom to worship. So we moved to the south in 1954. I was only almost 4 years old at that time. So we left from my town village, Thu Châu. I had to walk like 20 kilometers, and then from there it's high tree, and we stayed there for a couple of days, and they have transportation took us to Hanoi. We stayed in Hanoi for a couple of days, and then we have flight. They flew us from the north to the south. And we went to different place, and the South government really tried to put all the people in the same village together. So we live in Cu Chi, in my village. And in the north, we are farmer. So the whole people in community, we grow rice. But by the time we moved to the south, we moved to Cu Chi. That land, we have no water. So the whole villager, they changed from growing rice to grow peanut. And later on, they even make firecracker. And Thu Châu we're using the name Thu Châu because that's from the north, and very famous. We're able to sell across the whole Vietnam with the firecracker. That's the way they make living. But my father was a teacher. My grandfather was a herbal doctor, but he died early. And didn't even have a chance to taught my father. My father, at that time, he had like 2 teachers at the house. We had one that taught him Chinese, because he's herbal doctor, he need all the information writing in Chinese. And we have another teacher taught him French. So my father able to speak both Vietnamese and Chinese and French. But unfortunately, my grandfather died early, so he not able to learn what he need to learn. But he's a teacher. He's also a choir director in my village. Yeah.
Exciting.
He was my first grade teacher. Well, in Vietnam, when people, in Vietnam, the weather that we don't have like, winter, spring. We just have raining and not. We have 6 months of rain, and the other dry season. And I remember when we was in Cu Chi, I was too young to go to public school, so they enrolled me a Catholic, a private school, and I had to walk like a mile. And in Vietnam, they almost like everybody have a dog, and it loose. They don't have fan around the house. So it seemed like by the time I walked to school, on the dog walking around or chasing me, and I remember one time like 4 or 5 dogs chasing me, and I was praying so hard. I said, I need help, God, take me on this dog away, and the dog is sudden. It gone. So I said, okay, I know God listened to me, then I can always depend on God and ask. I am very strong in faith. The second one is that, my father was my teacher. So it sometimes is good, and then at the same token, it's like every time turn around and you was the one. So one time, as a young kid, you sleep. I slept in the class. and didn't know my father put chalk on over my face. And I didn't even wake up. I mean, that didn't wake me up, but all my friends laughed so loud that wake me up, and that's a good lesson. Never to do it again. Yeah, I have my older sister still in Vietnam, um, and she have like 10 children. So that's the reason she, at the time I sponsored my family, she with her in-law, and I was not able to sponsor my family. But I sponsored my family, and their own came here in 1984. Yeah. Yeah, I remember it was like close to Thanksgiving. And I think that was the biggest Thanksgiving I have. The sad thing is, um, I have been sending money home to help them with the process of paper, because they put my father in concentration camp. My father was a lieutenant in the police force. So the first thing when the communists came is they arrest my father, and they put him in a concentration camp, and we have no idea where it located. And finally, we're able to find out and try to support. So for that reason, and I marry American, my sister married American. That means under communists, our family is in the blacklist. Everything is you have bribery, so they can approve the paper. So a lot of money I had to send home to help their family, with the paperwork. And in 1984, when the family came, and I kind of like, okay, 6, 7 people come at the same time in winter. I have no money. My husband, he just applied for disability, so it's a lot of time that we didn't have money at that time. It's just we struggle, but the typical love conquer everything. And I told my family, I said, I don't have money to give to each one of you, but one thing as a teacher I do have, education. So they all stay at my house, and I send them to school. They own engineer except one is computer science. So my family doing quite well right now. So Taylor father is my brother, and he's also electrical engineer. So. I came to Oklahoma in 1974, so I was 24 years old. I went to Rose State College, and in 1975, when the fall of Vietnam, and it's very hard for me to see what's going on in Vietnam. But one thing I can help my people is volunteer. So I volunteer as a teacher assistant at Midwest City in Del City. Spend all my time teaching and helping, and also helping the Vietnamese community at that time. They came and they can't drive. So my husband and I, we take them, people go to the grocery store, help them to enroll their children to school. And my husband on the weekend, he went fishing, and when we caught home by the fish, we would bring to General Bay. I think all of you did interview him. My husband he worked for the Department of Defense. So worked with on the general and colonel, helping in the Air Force in Bien Hoa. So when they came here, my husband and I, we volunteer, and I have been a volunteer teacher on those time. And until I went to University of Central Oklahoma, and I have my former teacher, she came. So I asked the principal who hired me at that time. I said that maybe let her take my job. And then I, went to University of Central. But it's struggle. Not everybody want me to be a teacher. When I was at Rose State College, I'm good in math. Now my mathematics teacher was disappointed when he find out I'm a teacher. But, when I volunteered, I love my student. I love the students so much, and I usually sometimes bring the student to my house because, they refugee at that time. They don't know anybody. They like to listen to Vietnamese music. So I brought them to the house, and we just kind of take care. So I decided to be changing from want to be a dentist to be a teacher. And when I did my student teaching, and the principal and that teacher wrote a wonderful letter for me to get a job, but end up they didn't give it to me because my accent. And also when I did my, another teacher told me that, suggest me that I need to change because I speak with an accent, I shouldn't go in teaching. But I love my student. I said, no, I want to stay. And here I am. But I continue to go to school because of my accent as it continues. So I have my master's degree in education. Later on, I come back and have my in administration, certified by principal, and I say, I'm going to go to OSU and work on my doctorate degree. And here I am. Well, that's a good question, but it's kind of like I met my husband in Vietnam. I was an accounting clerk. In 1969, I graduated from high school. And in Vietnam, if you go to college, you have to go to Saigon. And my family, we don't have that kind of money. So I looking for a job. I was an accounting clerk at the PX, working for the Air Force. They had the commissary. So that's where I work. And with my background, good in math, very soon they give me take care of all the money, and from there, and they open suicide plantation, that where they sell the beer and soda. And they send me there to take care, inventory, kind of like manager at that place. And I was young. At that time, I was very young, 20 years old. And you have like 15 people work under, so I had to make sure how much we sold a day, and, so I worked there, and I met my husband. In Vietnam, the culture is when you go on dating, you not go by yourself. So my friend asked me to go when she went out, and I said, okay. I went, and he brought a friend, and that's where a blind date brought me to my husband. And he saw me, and he really fall in love. He said, whatever the price is, he want to make sure that he get me, and he give me the phone number. Always in my life, I like to study. So I brought a book, learning English. So I dialed the number. I said, well, thank you for your invitation. Well, he didn't invite me. But anyway, I said, and he said, well, if you like it, we go again. So the next day, we, he kind of bring the food and feed my friend and everything. And after 3 months, he said, I want to meet your family. And I say, I got to go home and ask my father. I went home and talked to my father, and I said, Father, now I lie, and this is bad for me on TV, but that's the reality. I said, Father, my boss want to see you. And my father said, if your boss is, it's okay, but better not, you're not dating American. I said, yeah, my boss. So he came and met my family, and my father liked him. He's very open and very easy to talk to, and of course, I'm the only one that speaks both English and Vietnamese, so I'm the one translation, and you know the story. And then later on, he said that 6 months later, he said that, I want to marry you. I said, in my culture, it is not that easy. I got to go home, talk to my father. So I went home and told my father, I said, Father, the boss want to marry me now. Father said, what? I got to go talk to your uncle. So my father went and talked to two of my uncles to discuss about my life. And one day I came home from work, and Taylor, father, my brother, stopped me at the bus station and stood right there and wait. He said, don't come home. The two uncles, they are here. They're going to take you to Saigon, make you marry a Vietnamese guy. I said, I get to. So I went to my friend's house that night. So the next day I'm okay. But I came back, my father said, where did you go? And I said, I went to Kim's house. And in Vietnam, we don't have telephone or anything like that. But I never discussed that situation again. And later on, my uncle came and, really serious about this. And I talked to my father. I said, if I can't marry him, I said, don't want to marry anybody. So father and me, we had a little disappointed. My father was very disappointed at that. And my sister at that time, I have a sister that lived in Phoenix, Arizona. And the reason she came to the United States because she's an interpreter, volunteer for the Catholic. So the Catholic Church sent her to school, invite her to come to Phoenix. So my sister said, well, the only way that you can come here to go to school, and then you two can marry later. And that was my plan. I came to Phoenix, to go to school. And life is so interesting how God put certain people in your life. And I stayed there. So we came to Oklahoma in 1974. Yeah. And I was blessed because I meet many other people who live in that apartment. There's another Vietnamese, so I get to know them, and I have a good support from that. But we was poor. All my friends cooked food for me, and I started in school and I just focused study only. Yeah. Well, came to Oklahoma because I kind of got supported by a small group of people. But in 1975, when I formed Vietnam, I really go out working. But in the Vietnamese, even in the Vietnamese community, the concept that here I am, marry American, is a little different, sensitive, and also to American, here I am an Asian. Like my husband went to work and. He told people that my wife is a teacher, and they say, "What? Your wife is Vietnamese. Now, how can she could be a teacher?" So it's a kind of go both face, a little challenge, and when I go, and then later on when I got the first. When I finished school, I went for the apply because I volunteered in Midwest City in Dev City, so I applied there and. Because of my accent, and I also not minority enough. I'm not dark enough, and I'm not white enough. So when they hire, even I have wonderful letter from my principal. I still have a copy here, and the teacher that I did the student teaching, they both wrote wonderful letter support, and they think that I would be a good teacher. Because when I teach science, I draw everything. I make the bulletin board and everything. So they both support me, but at that school that. They need a teacher, and if they hire an African American. And then I was waiting with my accent, and I was concerned that maybe I don't have a job. But I was so exciting that the principal from Oklahoma City Public School, he have a large number of refugees. Matter of fact, at Polk Elementary, a fifth grade center at that time. And he was looking for a Asian teacher that helped with dealing with the Asian family. So he came to the center office and looking, and in my application, so he called me, and I was so happy, and I came for the interview, and that evening he said, "You got the job." And to many American people don't realize we look alike. I look like a Chinese, I look like a Japanese. We speak different language. But every time we have a student look like me, the principal, Mr. Daniel, call, "Mrs. Anderson, we need your help." For being a short person, I had to run from one building to another building, and and I would go up there and say, and I said, "Well, Mr. Daniel, this is a Laotian. I speak Vietnamese, Oh, you can do it." So all the Asian student in that school, enroll the student there, if they sick or something, I'm the one contact the parent, and on the discipline, I'm the one calling the parent. Take care of all the Asian, and then later on, they had a job. That was the first time Oklahoma City Public School, they had the Title VII grant, and they offer the people wrote the grant for two schools. One is at Edgemere Elementary. They have too many Asian kids, and the second one is for Hispanic middle school. And a friend of mine, Cheryl Hubman, she speaks Spanish, so she worked with the middle school. I work with the elementary at Edgemere, and I told the principal I'd be happy to apply as a teacher. You have to take care of the kid. I took care of that. I did everything. So after 3 years, and I had some students do quite well. Many of my students, I still contact now, and Dr. Peter Lee. One time they Mother Day, and he called me. I moved in Tucson, so it's a very sweet. I still have connection with my fifth grade student, but at Edgemere, I work with 7 or 8 teachers, and we had a really great project. But in Oklahoma, at the Oklahoma State, they have the national origin. They need a coordinator, and I applied. I got a job right away. And that's what my job is, dealing with students who speak a second language, Hispanic, on different students. So every time the school have kids who do not speak English, and the teacher do not know how to teach and what to do with the student, they call my office. So I drive across the state. I drove to Idabel, Tahlequah, Guyman, all of this. And I'm working with Hispanic community. At that time, Latino didn't have the big Hispanic office either. I work with small, the Hispanic community and working their grant, and I work with African American, even though I'm ESL, but it kind of I get along quite well with the. I have the Korean community set up the Korean school, and work with Laotian and Miss Huet Green at the Associate Catholic Charity, and I will work on a refugee grant, and I remember that. One year that my husband was in hospital, he had 5 bypass, and I sat there, brought my computer, writing the refugee grant. And we did have $300,000 for a couple of years, and we had summer school for the kids, and we opened for the refugees. So I have, we talk about refugee, not only Asian, but students from Iran. So we had some students from Iran, and it's kind of funny that she's from Iran, but we have Vietnamese Farm Festival. So I have the kids dressed Vietnamese dress and dance, and this young baby kid from Iran, she wear Vietnamese dress and she danced, and I talked to the father. I kind of heard little concerned because they come from another, from Iran. And he said, my baby is so exciting about school. And she loved it. So it is, I work real well with all the Hispanic. Matter of fact, I'm the one invite Jaime Escalante. When I heard about him, I worked with under Governor Bellman. At that time, we had the House Bill 1017. And I worked with the State Representative Danny Williams, working on 2 projects that I'm very proud of. Require own educator to take multicultural education, young lady. I know you're in charge of that. And so they have to, own educator have to take, and also the creation of the Minority Teacher Recruitment Center. And I was the first director for Minority Teacher Recruitment Center, working with the region for higher ed, and working with both state. Because of my background, working across the whole state, so region for higher ed, like that idea for me to work with them, but at the same time I could deal with own school district. I went and with the House Bill 1017, all the teacher got raised, and I felt like we got to inspire teacher. We need to do a good job, because now after people increase tax, they want to see how teacher doing. And I saw the movie Stand and Deliver, and I call. I'm very aggressive on find good people and bring people to Oklahoma. So I call that school and able to talk to Mr. Jaime Escalante. And I make arrangement. I told my boss, I said that we have a conference in San Francisco. And I asked my boss if I can pay my own, willing to do that, to come to see this teacher, because he's a wonderful, I want to bring him to Oklahoma. And my boss said, we have money, we pay for it. So I went and invite him and to come to Oklahoma. And we had a conference. At UCO, I worked with Dr. April Holman, and at that time, and we set up at the first we got a room for 800 people, and I was the chair of this committee, and people say 800 people on Saturday, nobody come. I say, yeah, but they will come for him, and we have close to 3,000. We had to move from one room to where they play football in that stadium. I mean, people, and it kind of like at that time, Mr. Household was before Sandy Garrett was a superintendent at that time. Sandy Garrett also working at the State Department of Education, but she was not the superintendent yet. So we work, and I able to set up that conference, and I able to talk to McDonald's. They give us pay for lunch. So in the morning, when Mr. Jaime Escalante come, I pick him up, take him to the hotel, and that night, Friday night, have a dinner at my house, and I have the dean and superintendent come to the house, and we sit to have, Mr. Jaime Escalante said that next time I come, I stay at your house. You don't have to get a hotel. and McDonald paid for all the fly and everything. I work with the VOTAC. So I involve all the school, University of Oklahoma, and also and with Tinker, I work with a lot of, try to bring them in because he is so great. And I want everybody to have a chance. So VOTAC pay for all the printing. McDonald give us money. We have lunch, for all people who work under Governor Bellman and state representative and superintendent. All the people that play a key, important role in education. So we have lunch paid by McDonald. At that time, I worked with Ernie, and then we set up that he would be the keynote speaker, and we have concurrent session, and we have lunch and a concurrent session. And when Oklahoma City Public School find out that he come for my project, And when he accept that, I say, God, I don't know how much money. This man is a famous. They have movie. And I say, well, Mr. Jaime, the State Department, we have budget kind of limit. So how much money for your honorarium? He said, oh, Vaughn, I do it for you. Don't worry about the money. I was so happy to come back, and I said, we can pay like $2,000. He said, that's fine. So when Oakland City Public School, they have offered $5,000. They have been asking him on this time. He declined. And here I am. He come for almost like whatever it is, So when Oakland City find out that he comes, so that they kind of like peg it in, he can come and speak with their principal. But it is funny. I always bring famous people and come to different communities, like Native American. I bring the scientist camp. So not only Asian, but also and the Asian I brought the writer of the Unwanted, Dr. Ken Nguyen. I bring on the people that can make a change in the ESL. I want to give the ESL student that they can do it. Yeah. When I first came here, there's only a small group of Vietnamese. Now I able to meet some people that came here as a foreign exchange student. So I also working with those people. And when the refugee came, what happened is when the refugee came, many people, the parents, they don't have money to send to come, but they send their kid to come. So they come, the kid come with somebody that come to United States or their aunt or whatever. But they don't have food. They don't have Vietnamese food, So I usually, my husband and I, we usually cook a lot of Vietnamese food, this Vietnamese authentic food, and open, invite like on the weekend, all of this, like I have like 14, 15 people come to the house to eat. I feed them. They don't know Thanksgiving. So I have Thanksgiving and invite people, 30 people. Taylor know when she was young, she always know the only Thanksgiving, Christmas, I bring on the people, refugee people. The people that I know, like some people new to Vietnamese community, I know about it. I invite them to my house and get them acquainted with the American community. And when I go out do presentation, I feel like I build a bridge between the non-speaking parent and the American. And that's the reason I have a secretary. Her name Martha Frere. You guys interviewed her before, and she's working with me. And I said that, Martha, we need a good Hispanic teacher. Why don't you go in the field of teaching? And I have other Vietnamese also. So she work and go to school. And because she's going to be a teacher, when I do go do presentation, I bring her and I share with her how to do it, deal with it. We went to Guyman, we went to Hooker, we got lost. And we went to the gas station and said, we went looking for Hooker school. Martha and I, it was so funny, but we're very close. And when you guys interview her, they thought that she got support by Hispanic, but she said, no, my boss is Vietnamese. We're working like when we bring consultant from is for Hispanic community. Martha and her husband, my husband, and Tam and another one, we get together like breakfast. And on Saturday, and we post the information at the Hispanic, restaurant or grocery store or something like that. Or when we bring a Vietnamese, we do the same thing in Vietnamese. We are very close in our office. I learned matter of fact, tomorrow afternoon we go to Martha Fair. Last year, Martha came to Tucson when I find out, I have this cancer. And Martha came to Tucson, stayed with me 1 week, cooked the best authentic Mexican food. I got spoiled. Yeah, we're very close. I'm working with own community. It's not one, yeah. I like to share with the owner of the ESL kid and the people from other race. We all have trial in our life. We have different kind of trial. But when I first came here, I spoke no English. And you can learn. And we all have mindset. If you work hard, one thing about this country is I love is only in this country we can, that not in Vietnam either, that if you have a dream, you can be a doctor, you can be dentist, you can be a teacher, you can be whatever it is, you work hard. I have to tell you, I stay up to 2, 3 o'clock at night to study. It is not that easy, but you sacrifice like 4 years, and then you have that degree, and you do a lot better in your life. It's a lot better, and regardless what race, I have students in my class, they're African American, they do well just like the Hispanic, Indian. Don't let people say about you become reality. And it doesn't mean that, just because you Asian, the other Asian will support you. Sometimes you don't. And even in Hispanic community, some people, like when I was at the State Department, we had a project called 2000. In that project, if the student take the pre-algebra at 8th grade and geometry at 10, the gap between minority and non-minority is very small. Male and female, very small. And I want to implement that in Oklahoma. And when I have meeting with other states, and I told them about that, and this is what they say. Wow, now this is a minor, and I hate to say, but an African American gentleman said that, if we're teaching them and then they will do well with our job. I said, that's what we need to do. We need to teaching our children to take over our job. That's what our job is. We educate the kid. And I don't have that kind of money, but I wish that, at the school that have minority student, a large number minority student, if they hire teacher, they bring more, instead of money wasting, we bring people come to teach our student. I guarantee you in the short time, they will do well. Why that my student is a 5th grade, they came here speak, no English, and I have some African American Hispanic student can add 2 plus 2. At the end, they do well because I look at them without color. All my kids can learn, and that's what teachers need to do. All the student can learn. So I want all the minority student and white student. We need to remember the white student that come poor family. They had same struggle. My husband come from a poor family. They struggle. They just like us. They barely able to make that. So on everybody in this country, you are very blessed. You live in this country. You have the freedom to be whatever you want. You work hard, honey. Yes, you work hard. I work very hard, but you still can reach your dream. And nobody can stop you. And when you have that degree in your hand, nobody can stop you. And that's very powerful. You can do things for yourself and for your people.